So nice to hear your voice.
It's been so long.
It has been so long. I'm surprised that didn't skip the meeting because you're just fucking tired of hearing my voice.
What? It's not all about you, by the way.
It's about us.
Someone else who comes on the show.
Exactly. I'm so excited. Happy episode 40. Episode 40. Uh, uh, uh.
I don't know. I was going to do like a 40 with my hands, but that doesn't really. No, it's not easy.
No, it's not easy.
It's not easy.
No, but now I have a sense of diameter, so that's great.
I knew that was going to happen when I did that.
Yeah, exactly. How big is a schmeckle?
Oh, hopefully. Look, it keeps growing. Yeah, I've already been up for a while and I shoveled snow already this morning.
Damn.
Breakfast. I had a shower.
Damn.
I know.
Powerful woman. I could barely get out of bed this morning. I could have slept until noon at this rate if I was actually not setting my alarm.
I could have slept in too, but I just had to because I have something to do right after this. So I'm like, and then of course we haven't really had snow in a few weeks, but we had, I don't know, like about an inch of snow maybe overnight.
Yeah, that's nothing.
Well, or maybe no more than that, a couple inches.
That's okay. 2 inches definitely makes a difference for sure.
Well, especially but Hero, I have to shovel my sidewalk. You don't.
No, I don't.
It's like it's funny when you finally have a house and you're like, oh shit, I gotta watch out for other people because if they fucking slip,
you're liable.
Yeah, you have.
Shoot.
I think so. Yeah, I mean that's kind of one of the reasons. I mean, it's a nice thing to do anyway, but.
Well, that's bullshit.
Got a shovel in front of your property, so.
Well, that's bullshit.
You live in an apartment in Vancouver, so you don't have to worry.
I know. I don't see myself ever owning a house. I don't know why I say that, but I really don't see myself being a house owner.
I said that too at your age, my friend.
Did you?
I sure did. We didn't think we ever would and didn't know if we really wanted it. Things change. I don't know.
No, it's true for sure. For sure. I know you got such a gorgeous home as well.
as if I look at this though. Look, there's pieces of tape. I've never been here, so you don't really know, but
all the work you put into it that you show me, I can imagine it's gorgeous.
Well, thanks. I don't know if gorgeous is the right word. It's old. It was built was it over 100 years ago now. So
our house in Caristo was over 100 years old, actually. Yeah,
there's a lot of those, and yeah, so
it had lead paint.
Yeah, I'm sure. And you know what? And with these old houses, they all have asbestos in them too.
Oh.
You just don't disturb the asbestos, but like anything older than, I think it's like 1970 and older, perhaps. But anyway,
Jesus.
So, and how are you this morning? You said you just got up, as always. Did you go to bed at like 2 a.m?
No, thankfully not. I went to bed like at midnight.
Really okay, that's not so bad.
No, not bad at all. No, I wasn't up all night.
That's good.
No, exactly.
Guess this morning, popping on any second here is. Yes. Does she like to go? So, okay, this I think, and this is what we do, right? This is one of Hero's guests. I mean, sometimes we have like joint guests that we're yeah, we both really want them on the show. I don't.
Not joint guests, but we
just joint. But joint. Who is this lovely woman?
So Tiffany Tickner is a wonderful specimen of a human being. Her light radiates out through her eyes and every vessel of her skin. She is
true.
I know, leave it to me, right? No, you could tell that I didn't just wake up. So Tiff is someone that I met actually through the yoga community, and not just because of yoga, but we met through the yoga community. She was new to teaching at the community that I was very much a part of for a long time. And I met her at a teachers gathering. And because I knew everyone was, I always liked going to new teachers to really connect to who they were. Because I wanted to be, I'll take their class, I'll check them out, and also welcome them to the community, because I took a lot of pride in the community that I was a part of for so long.
Yes.
So after that happened, I started to bump into her a little bit more, and we connected a bit online. and I subbed for her a little bit, and she subbed for me a little bit, I think. And then we reconnected when I started teaching at the city at Burnaby, because she was a teacher there. And she was actually starting to teach less when I came in. I think she stopped teaching when I started teaching at city of Burnaby. So again, we missed paths. But when we reopened again next summer.
What does she do? She's a yoga teacher.
Yeah, she's a yoga teacher, but she also is actually in school right now to become a counselor,
Okay.
And her specialty is in trauma and mental health.
Okay.
So she reached out to me saying, I would love to be on your podcast if you have any openings available, and to talk about all things mental health and talk about spirituality and how these things connect in the body and how they go to basically the genetic properties of who we are, how they really affect the chromosomes in our body, the cellular makeup in our body. And she also has a background in being a Reiki practitioner and stuff as well. So, and she's got a really beautiful husband as well. I'm just going to say that. Sweetest soul. The sweetest soul.
Soul, that's right. Just on that's all that's on the inside counts, right? That's it.
Yes, exactly. And if they have a hot ass. So she's they're both lovely people, and I just thought, you know what, sometimes you just know when you feel with the energy of somebody that they would be really, really incredible to talk to, and that I think there's a lot of stuff that will come up that I definitely don't know about her. Like, I don't know a lot about her personally and her history, but we've always connected so deeply just as people. And so when you have those connections, it's kind of nice to just say, let's talk a little bit more about this and see what comes yeah.
Well, and not to say like yet another yoga teacher, but I guess what I'm going to say, or I'm trying to say, is Vancouver, like, people who don't know Vancouver, British Columbia very well, there's a lot of yoga teachers. Like there's a lot of yoga teachers in Vancouver, and there's a lot of creative community as well. But I mean, it's I don't know, like, why is that?
I think because the yoga craze came so much from the West Coast in terms of modernization, and then it came into Vancouver. So I think it became something that created health for people and wellness so massively that people wanted to share it themselves, and they probably saw it as a get-rich-quick scheme. I think because become a teacher, teach as many classes, make this much per hour, and then you realize it's not the reality at all.
Doing this because I'm like, no, not at all.
Not at all. So here she comes, as gorgeous as always. Hello and good morning.
Hello.
Hi. You've got gorgeous hair.
Oh my gosh.
You're like, this thing.
Not gonna lie, I actually put effort into it this morning. It did not look like this when I woke up.
But you always look radiant. I mean, maybe it's from a gay man's perspective, but you always look radiant.
Oh my gosh, bless you. So I can't believe that. You're at 9 o'clock in the morning I don't have stretch pants on for the first time in, I don't know, a week. I have jeans on. It's very nice. Thanks for giving me an excuse.
Yes, you're very welcome. I'm glad that you're wearing something that's not yoga. It's awesome.
This is totally like, I'm not really related, but just because you said that. And actually, we're recording right away, so just so you know.
Thank you. Yeah.
Right. But funny that you just said that. Funny segue. Someone just told me yesterday that there's more plastic surgeries happening now because of Zoom and people wanting to I thought that was a strange statistic, because I thought, wouldn't it be more when people are in person? Like, it'll be less. Yeah. But I guess now there's like a trend that people are noticing because they're having to do this all the time.
Wow.
Apparently. Anyway, what you just said about the jeans and that just popped into my mind. So
yeah.
No kidding.
You can't even see my jeans, but I'm wearing them anyways.
Exactly. But with the way that fabric touches your body changes the way that your behavior feels too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It really does. Definitely. It really does. And coming from someone that doesn't dress up at all anymore, like, it definitely makes a difference. You feel comfy, you're gonna be a little bit more lethargic. It's just your nature.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, especially when you're a yoga teacher, you could just get away with, that's your profession. You're just gonna wear stretchy pants all day. So
it's the best.
Pretty great.
It's pretty great.
Oh, man.
I know we do this every single episode. We're like Shoe Talk Sex, where we're like, Rachel, that's your cue to turn your head to me. There you go. But yeah, so we were actually talking about the fact that you and myself have had some really incredible conversations and energetic exchanges without necessarily knowing much about our history and our past. And that when you reached out about being on the podcast, I thought this would be a great opportunity to really get to know another through the three of us, both through the professional lens, but also really the personal lens.
Mm-hmm.
And also the fact that we do talk about the fact about yoga because of threads, because we're both from that background, Rachel and myself as well. But the fact that, you know, there's so much behind the philosophy and the ethics of yoga and how that goes into your daily living and what you do outside of your teaching or your own practice with the practice of yoga, right? And so when I was introducing you just before you hopped on, I know that you're in school is it clinical counseling that you're doing right now, or?
Yeah, so I'm actually just finishing my psych undergrad at UBC. I'm a mature student. I went back a few years ago, and I'll be finished at the end of this year, and then I'll go on to do my postgrad for counseling psychology.
Amazing.
Fabulous. Well, and we're just going to dive right into it. What drew you to that? I mean, I know you're a yoga teacher and all those kinds of things, but was there something on a deeper level that really, like, have you always kind of wanted to go that route?
It's funny. I remember when I was probably about 16 years old, I remember kind of, you know, you're in high school and you have to take like the career and personal planning classes. And I was like, I don't know what I want to do. For a long time, I wanted to be a dancer. Like, I was really into ballet and thought that was going to be my career trajectory. And after like a series of just kind of growing up events and being like, oh, I think I want to do maybe more with my mind and keep moving my body in other ways. I think that brought me to just thinking, oh yeah, psych would be cool. And then life went a different direction completely after high school. And I ended up getting into some like body work stuff and aesthetics. So I've always been in the realm of, like, I guess you could say, wellness, and yoga and all of that. But I ended up doing my Reiki master training a few years ago. And so taking clients for Reiki, really, I noticed that the people coming to see me were more there to have a conversation with me and have like a safe space to just talk. And I was like, this is amazing. And I feel so honored that people trusted me with that. But I didn't feel like I had a lot of tools to provide them with other than the like holistic healing that we were doing together. So, and the brain has always fascinated me so much. So that's kind of started me. I was like, I think I'm going to go back to school and just see if I can do this. So like flash forward 6 years later, I'm almost done my undergrad.
Oh my God. And did you start doing it before the pandemic kind of hit? Okay.
Yeah, I've been in school. I went back to school in like 2016. I just started very part-time while I was working. And then a couple of years ago, I decided to go full-time. So yeah, I've been in school for a while.
Okay. I guess I kind of asked just because it seems like such an ideal time to, now do things, because most things, I guess, are online and people do have a little bit more time, it seems, but I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's funny especially being an older student, like our lives are different, right? So I'm married, I have, my family is I have nieces and definitely different priorities. So oftentimes you kind of feel like you're missing out on a lot of like big kind of life things because your cohort is not in school with you really. So the pandemic has kind of been like, oh, okay, well, like there's not a lot else going on right now. I don't feel like the sense of like missing out. So that's, been an upside to it.
Absolutely, for sure. And being in a profession that you're doing now, in terms of psychology and counseling, even though hopefully the pandemic will soften and you could still do counseling sessions in person just from a safe distance for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like I went to my naturopath yesterday and it was totally as normal. I'm sure having the virtual landscape now for being a counselor is going to be a lot more lucrative in some ways too for you. So you can have in-person or virtual, and clients that are international as well.
Yeah.
I've been seeing mine virtually, my therapist virtually. Like it's been great. I mean, and actually, interestingly enough, because you're in your own comfort environment of your home, seeing your therapist, there is definitely a different energy or feeling than if you went into their office, where it's a little bit, a little bit more not clinical, but you know what I mean. It's just different. So I almost feel more comfortable interestingly enough, in my home having these sessions. But
yeah, it's interesting. I work in a couple. Well, I work in a counseling clinic, and I do kind of admin operations, and it's pretty unbelievable, like this, to see the influx of clientele, and also I think virtually it's been really cool to see people who normally probably would have shied away from it or said, oh no, that's not something that I'm interested in. And then seeing, like you were saying, it's comfortable and it's a way of doing something maybe, more privately if that's something that people are concerned about. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, and then, like what you just said, I mean, talk about a time to need this type of profession even more than, I mean, we've always needed it, but that's just kind of cracks, I guess, the topic of conversation of mental health and what's going on right now, and just people needing it more than ever. But I mean, now, have you done any clinical work yet yourself, or you're still in the learning state?
Still in the learning stages. Yeah. This semester I'm taking my first counseling interviewing course, and it's really interesting because I have my like fake client that I have every week, and I see them, and so we're practicing these skills, and it's interesting. I have to watch myself on camera after, which is always super fun. Wow. But yeah, it's again, like thinking about having this virtual option. Obviously, normally that class would be in person, and we would spend a lot of FaceTime together with people. But we're so lucky. My client is not in the country even, and so we're so lucky to have this to use, and also just have like a little bit of social time. Almost like it feels really nice to connect with a student in my class, and I think a lot of us are feeling that. It's like, oh, this is so amazing to be able to talk with someone for an hour and have that face-to-face time.
I was saying a few times to people that I feel like we're we'll need therapists and people to assist us to know how to reintegrate into society. Like that's a very nerve-wracking thing for a lot of people. So we almost need like support groups to do that even more. That's going to be just such a crazy thing. And the other thing I was going to say is, you mentioned your fake client. I heard not that long ago, I didn't really realize that doctors and, people in your profession, there's actually a profession where you are like a fake patient. Is that correct? Or you
didn't know that. That's cool. So you just help people practice?
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, I think it was on CBC. I was listening to a program. This was maybe a year ago now, but they were talking to people whose careers they're like fake patients for a lot of the time for, doctors going through med school and those kinds of things, but they get a whole scenario and they come in like, actually with the ailments and all those kinds of things.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I guess I kind of understand, like they do that. I mean, it makes sense, right? Like I remember even having like, when I was in school for aesthetics, we had like clients come in and with like fake issues, and it makes sense whenever you're working with people face to face. I think it's really easy to have all this knowledge in your head, and then the moment you're in it, it's gone. So I think like having that practice with people, but I had no idea there were people who actually like made a career out of it. That's cool.
So cool.
Terminology for it too, and I cannot recall what it is, but anyway.
It's like a mystery shopper, except
Yeah, exactly. Something like that.
Yeah, and it's a mystery case. Mystery case study. No, that's so. And also in terms of your background and stuff too, you said that trauma was something that you were really interested in, correct? Am I mistaken about that?
No, that's right. Yeah. To me, it's so interesting because it's such a personal, individual experience. Like you can't, I think a lot of the way that psychology is going and counseling is going now is more in the direction of really looking at the individual, which you think would be what we do, but it's a lot of the time most psychologists use the DSM, which is like a diagnostic manual, and so it's great for labeling and getting kind of the basics down. However, it doesn't really look at the individual, all these factors that we have that play into how, like you were like trauma, for instance, plays out in our lives. So
yeah,
to me, that's really interesting because it's kind of like putting together all these different pieces of a puzzle that always looks different.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I'm hoping, like it sounds like people or therapists and psychologists are heading in that direction more, and also the somatic, the body mind connection and all those things are finally like, okay, these holistic people they're onto something, like this is a real thing. There's science to back it up, and then also like we've had an intergenerational trauma specialist from the Mount Sinai Hospital in New York come on and talk about specifically with Holocaust survivors, and we're grandchildren of Holocaust survivors, and how does that genetically to play? So do you guys get any of that kind of, do you talk about that stuff in your schooling? Or
I think I'm too early on to really have a depth in that. Like everything is so much about kind of learning theory and I took an abnormal psych class, which was really interesting. Like that and like the brain and how the neurological side of things works. And like similar to what you're saying, the genetic component is so interesting, but it's a very kind of on a relatively shallow scope in the education I'm doing now. So I would say hopefully once I get to the end of this year and into my post-grad, then I'll be able to dig deeper into that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like hero. I never know what side you're on.
It's funny. When I turn to my left, you're on the right side. So you probably turn to your right. No, you turn to your left. There you go. And so when you talk about being into the background of trauma, we get that very much so from our own end. And so, of course, naturally it leads me to ask you, have you dealt with trauma in your life in any specific way? And if you haven't, have you been exposed to other people's traumas? And what was the first point of memory, I suppose, when that kind of hit you? Because it probably didn't hit you until now when you thought, I'm going to go back to school and do psychology. But was there even a little seed from like 3 years old, 5 years old, 15 years old? Was there kind of a trail that was kind of set?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's trauma because of just the way that trauma, there are certain aspects of functioning that are affected, of course. And so I don't know if I'd say it was trauma, but when I was 16, I moved out of the house unexpectedly. And it was definitely a positive experience. However, it was just an uprooting. And so what I've been noticing, especially over the last year, of some of the things that I've been having to do just with school, but also with my own counseling and therapy, is thinking, I'm noticing coping mechanisms and ways of, different defenses and ways of perceiving the world that I think probably have been impacted by that experience. So I would say, like, I don't feel like that's a trauma for me personally. However, it's really interesting when you look back on your life and kind of have a moment to reflect on how instances have impacted you throughout. Other people's trauma, yes, I would say, you know, as a Reiki practitioner, and before that, I had a massage studio for a while, and my clients, it comes out in really interesting ways. Like, someone can be on the massage table and they're all of a sudden that, like you were saying, Rachel, with the somatics of it, something about like someone caring for you, touching you, and being there like in a safe space somehow just really allows that to release. So I think that's what I love so much about Reiki and about body work, is that it lets people do that.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Like I would always thought about going into Reiki, but I just think I really take on other people's emotions too much. I'm quite an empath as well. So I don't know if that, like, do you find that for yourself, or you're able to separate the two, and, you know, once you've done the session with them, you're kind of able to move on with your life and not let that affect you. I don't know if I do that.
Yeah, I know. It takes practice, because I remember when I was really young, because like I've been doing some form of body work since I was like 19 years old. So it takes practice to not be so invested in like, I must like help this person, and I am the person that's gonna, you know, be the one to like make their back pain go away, or their whatever it might be that you're working on in Reiki. And so I think it really takes practice. Also, now having a psych background, working with people, it helps. I approach it in a different way. So Reiki, I think traditionally is a lot more, I think I approach it more as what's happening cognitively for people and why it works the way it does, instead of being really connected to the energetic exchange, because it's actually not an exchange anyways. Like that's traditionally not what happens, but the cognitive side of things is really interesting to me.
Yeah. Are you in Vancouver?
Yeah.
Just curious. Did you grow up in Vancouver?
Yeah, I grew up in Burnaby.
Okay. Never. I can't tell people's ages, so I'm just like, did we grow up in the same? Because you mentioned a dancer, and like I grew up dancing, but I quit when I was quite little. But my sister was a dancer. We grew up in North Van, though.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah,
I don't know.
I'm sure we've crossed paths at some point. It's not that big of a city.
No,
exactly.
No. And also in your teaching communities, you wouldn't have overlapped because your teaching communities were separate as well.
Oh, okay.
There we go. Hero knows.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Because
I feel like I've had to teach all over this damn city.
Oh, fuck. I have been such a slut.
Keep my rent paid.
I've been such a slut in this community, let me tell you. It is like everyone knows who I am, for better and primarily for worse. And you know what? I'm not mad about it.
They're like, do you want to come teach this class in Langley for $30? Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I may take you 5 hours to walk. Is that okay?
Yeah. Is there a bus route that goes there?
Yeah. Right?
Just before you hopped on, it's funny because we were talking about like, why are there so many yoga teachers in Vancouver? And we had a very short conversation, and he, you know, Hero was just saying how, you know, when it first came to North America, maybe it was really predominantly on the West Coast. So like Los Angeles, all the way down, you know, all the way up to obviously us, but that people maybe thought it was like a get rich quick thing. Is that what you said, Hero? And I was like going like this, like, what? Who thought that? Like, why would they think that it was maybe an easy, I don't know. Like, what are your thoughts? I don't know why there are a lot of yoga teachers in Vancouver.
There are. I've said that to my husband so many times since I've started teaching, you know, 8-9 years ago. It was like, I want to know per capita how many yoga teachers are in the city, because it seriously seems like everyone you talk to has done a teacher training. And it's not just that, you know, like these are people that I meet just randomly anywhere. And so I think oftentimes when friends tell me that they're going to do a yoga teacher training, or that they want to be a yoga teacher, I say, you know, like, go for it. It's awesome. but you do have to know like the ins and outs of the actual business of it as well.
Yes.
Like if you gotta, I think the one thing that I would say was like, get yourself an accountant that can help you with the back end of your taxes and like taking off all the different payments and stuff that we have to do that generally as a contractor or as a sole proprietor you don't do. Like, so I think, yeah, it's definitely not a get rich quick thing, like at least not now, maybe 20 years ago, but
yeah, I think the get rich quick thing that I was referring to is more the illusion and the allure of, oh, you work for yourself, you get to teach how much or how little you want, you get to control how much you make, and all these kind of buzz ways of marketing yourself, right? And as you said, I think if it was 10 years ago or even now maybe 15 years ago in Vancouver, yeah, if you had something talented and you started from the ground up, you might be one of those evergreen teachers. But we're talking even now in COVID that those evergreen teachers are not even wanting to teach full time anymore. And if they are, they really are just doing it as a fun way to keep their practice alive. They're not doing it to make a career.
Absolutely. I definitely felt that over the last couple of years, that it's something that when you really, like if you love teaching and you're not interested in doing it as a full-time job, it can be like such an enriching experience. Like I teach one class a week, as you know, and like that is literally one of the highlights of my week. Like I've had times where I feel like the complete opposite of that in other studios and other classes. So it's really nice to finally be like, no, I think I'm just going to have this for me and do it for just because, especially right now. Luckily, I get to do it in person, and it's a cool way to see people. You're like, hey, we all get to hang out for an hour. It's awesome.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's true.
Well, it's funny. It's funny because I had a small yoga studio for a short amount of time for a couple of years, and every time I told somebody what I did, and it's the illusion, I guess. Oh my God, you're a yoga teacher and you own a studio. You must be so relaxed. You must be like the calmest person that anyone. I'm like, it's a fucking business. It's still a business, A. And B, because it's just so competitive too with all the teachers that, when you start, they're not going to want to pay you $50-$60 a class. So I guess like to what you're saying about telling anybody who wants to become a yoga teacher, I think it's a beautiful thing. And I think you're going to have a lot of, self-learning and a lot of, wonderful tools that you can use to help people in your immediate community. But to have that be a full-time gig and to actually survive, I actually put it like akin to like a struggling actor.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is.
I think it's interesting too, like when you think about what yoga is and then thinking about trying to make money off of it. Like that was my struggle with Reiki as well. It's like you're doing something that's supposed to be like a healing tradition that does not come from making money at all. Like that's like kind of the opposite to the whole point. And so I'm not saying that it's wrong. It's just, I personally have always found it to be this like internal struggle or this like cognitive dissonance of like, I need to make money and I love doing this, but like also it feels a little bit uncomfortable.
Yep.
Especially when the people who really need it often are those who don't, can't access it as easily as some other people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the amount that you get paid as a teacher, I mean, there are some studios that pay what you're worth, and it's very elitist in some ways, or if not elitist, it's very selective in the people that are providing those services for those types of rates and the clientele that supports the studio as well. But, you got to teach at least 17 classes a week minimum if you want to be making a reasonable amount of living. And that's still not a lot. Like teachers, are astounded when I say, if you want to make an average of $50K a year as a teacher, depending, and if you're making about $50 a class, which even right now is hard in COVID times for most studios, you have to teach 17 to 20 classes a week every week if you want to make that amount. And if you sustainably want to teach full time, I always say to newer teachers or people asking, usually 15 classes is where you'll hit your threshold. Usually.
Yeah.
And that's if those classes are stacked, they're consistent, and you have a couple of days off as you would like a regular job. Otherwise, you will burn out within a year.
And that you're not going like what Tiff was saying, like from Vancouver to Langley or, you know, and teaching at 5 or 6 different studios. They're all over the freaking city, all over greater Vancouver. But when you talk about like livable wage though in Vancouver now, something else I was just reading is in Vancouver, I think what they said too, this is just for people who want to own a home, let's say. And actually Hero and I were talking about this before you hopped on too, because my husband and I finally have a house, but we moved to Vernon to get it. Right? So out of Vancouver in the Okanagan.
Yeah, beautiful though.
It is beautiful. Oh, absolutely. But I think in Vancouver, they were saying there has to be at least a combined income in your household of at least $220,000 to even consider to own a home in Vancouver. Wow.
Sorry, can you say the number again?
220,000.
You have to make that much per year?
Yes.
Holy shit.
Yes. Order to be a homeowner. Yeah. So
and again, just to be very specific, is that like your net pay or that's your gross and then after taxes, right? Because
assuming it'd be after, that's a good question.
I would assume it would be like after taxes. It's because if you make 200,000+ a year, you're in a certain tax bracket, and so they take a good 40,000 or something like that, even more.
This is coming from a top realtor friend in the Okanagan who also works in Vancouver, and she's really good at pulling these statistics and sending them out monthly. But that was her new statistic.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I know. I don't even know what to say to that. I mean, we all know Vancouver is expensive to live in, but that just shows, just even making that 50 grand a year. I mean, you're it's
barely getting by.
Apartment and rent or whatever. That's beautiful too. I mean, it just depends on what you want.
It does.
Right.
It does. And the industry that you choose to work in, and the profession you get within the industry, and the job you get within the profession.
I was reading something a couple things actually this morning. I was reading before I hopped on here, talking about that attitude of if you want to make more money, then get a better job. And the idea that whomever is doing that job that is making the lower pay, somehow they deserve to make that much money, and they don't deserve to make a living wage. And it's just this really interesting, messed up kind of idea that we have in our society that is always, I think we don't think about it. We think progress. You know, I did the same thing. I went back to school because I was tired of the grind all the time and thought that maybe a little bit of education would bolster me. Now thinking, forward into maybe next year, who knows? Who knows? But we don't think to where we've come from and the other people that are still there, for instance, thinking about people who are, I don't know, it's the situation you're trying to get out of. Why do they not deserve to make a living wage?
I agree.
That is true. Because I was just thinking, if somebody said to me when I was teaching yoga more full time, it's not that I would complain that I couldn't pay some of my bills, but someone could say to me, well, you chose that. You chose to make that amount of money, or you chose that profession. So, it's kind of
yeah. And a lot of people don't choose. Maybe you had a choice to say, okay, this is really challenging, I'm going to pick something else. A lot of people can't pick something else, and they aren't, it's really, I think it's such a privileged position for us to be in, to say, for me to say, I want to go back to school at 32 years old. That is a privilege, not something that everyone can do. And to say that people are just, I don't know, submitting to that kind of life is really I don't know. It's a really dangerous.
You're such a baby. Oh my goodness.
Well, I'm not 32 anymore.
She said go back at 32.
Yeah.
I missed that, but you are okay though. I think we're about the same age.
You are.
I'll be 37 in like a month.
I just turned 38.
Oh,
yeah.
There you go.
Sad. Like I feel, and also, yeah, to go back to school. Like first of all, I commend you for going back to school and taking that leap of faith. But there's people like it's okay now. Like I know people in their 40s, 50s, 60s that are going back to school and learning.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know why it's unfortunate that the word mature student has to have a bit of a negative connotation, because I feel that way too. I don't know if you do, but it kind of has this like embarrassment attached to it.
Yeah.
I did this. But I don't know, like, so when you go through your classes, are you the oldest one in them, or?
Usually, yeah. It's kind of funny now being online. Obviously, I have no idea, but yeah, definitely. And now I'm in 4th year, so it feels less, I guess, like less of a age gap, but not really. Like it's so funny. I had myself and another girl who is a mature student. She and I have gone through, like we went to Langara together, and then we both transferred to UBC together. So we've had these classes together. So we're around the same age. So we kind of were like, okay, like, oh, ladies unite.
Yeah.
And so we had this huge lecture hall of like probably, I think this class had like probably 200 and 250 students. And we sat at the front. We were like both like keeners, like always, you know, like ready to learn. And one day this girl came up to my friend outside of class and was like, hey, you're in my class, right? And she's like, oh yeah, I'm in so-and-so's class. And she's like, yeah, you and that older lady sit together, right? And I'm like, I am that older lady. That's me.
Oh God. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Because this is someone that's probably, 19, right? So then
she's very young. Bless her sweet little heart. And like, it wasn't, I just was like, yeah, that's because, I said to my husband the other day, I'm like, I don't feel my age at all. Like I seriously feel like I'm still 23 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And
I thought you were.
Well, but like, it's weird when someone else sees you differently than you kind of assume that everyone else kind of it was really weird. I was like, okay,
yeah,
this is it's like a pivot in life. Like it puts you, I don't know. So yeah, on campus it was weird. I probably also maybe like projected that and like also was acutely aware of my age because I was always around younger people. Mm-hmm. And even in my work atmosphere in the last 4 years, I've been in jobs where I also am usually the oldest working with young people, which I love so much. But I think I've just made a career shift, in the last couple of weeks. And I can't believe how much more myself I feel and so much more like secure because I'm surrounded by people my own age. I don't always feel like I'm like the odd man out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Just to the same conversation about mature students. I think it's like, what is it? Age 35 when a woman is a geriatric
pregnancy.
Yeah. And they call it geriatric.
Yeah.
Legitimately. One of my yoga students a few years ago now, and she said that to me because she was pregnant for the first time and she was 35. She's like, yeah, so I'm a geriatric, I was like, what? Like, what a horrible, horrible terminology.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
That's like from the dark ages, I imagine. Like people were probably almost at the end of their life, 100, 200 years ago at that point. So
probably.
Let's flash forward to 2021 and call it something else.
Right. Just call it you're pregnant.
Yeah. Yeah. My sister I have a twin sister. She's turning 37 next month. And she just had my second niece in December and she's very healthy. It's
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, I got to say that though, first and foremost, what has it been like? I mean, maybe we actually had her second. So what's it like having a child in a pandemic versus a child not in a pandemic? Did she notice the difference with that? Or was it just, no, I'm just happy to have a second kid and bada bing, we're good.
Oh man, she is like the most amazing person. You get a snapshot into what parenthood is like. Like you can see your friends and like posts on Instagram and whatever. And like, it's like, oh, that looks stressful. But like being in the midst of it with her sometimes is just like, she's so level-headed. She's exhausted. Like, my youngest niece is going through this new like sleep, so she's not sleeping at all. And like but the biggest part of it, I think, for how it's impacted them in the pandemic is that it's isolated. Like usually, like when she was pregnant with my first niece, or when she was on mat leave with her, we would go to, like have coffee and go on walks and go to the mall and do a bunch of activities. And now that's not possible. So it's really been a challenge, I think, for her to be just alone all day, trying to keep them, especially my eldest niece she just turned 3 and she's so active and like trying to keep them entertained for that. Like, like sometimes it's a Paw Patrol day because she's like, I just can't, but like other days.
Yeah. Well, then my sister has he's going to be 2 in May.
Yeah.
But she lives up here too, actually. And it's her only child right now. And she's a couple years younger than me, but she just decided to put him in daycare recently. Even just, she doesn't work right now, but she's like, even for an hour a day. And the reason being developmentally with what's happening. And this is something that you might end up experiencing being a counselor, being in therapy with, years down the road. Like, how are these children going to develop? Mm-hmm. And it also depends on the choices the parents have made, obviously, with COVID and all those things. But even just like, I was going into a grocery store yesterday and a mother with 2 little kids, and she's like, before they went in, put your masks on. Do you have your masks? Put the masks on, put them on, put them on. Like, how, I don't know. I can't imagine.
There's going to be a lot of research, I think, coming out in the next few years. There already is, actually. I'm astounded at how much research has come out just in the last year. Like a lot of my profs are working on, of course, like how psychologically it's impacting people. But developmentally, I think it'll be interesting to see kids and even just their awareness of things that we never would have been aware of when we were little. Like we've had to talk to my niece about what a virus is, and she kind of gets it. Like she's like, okay, like that's what we do when we go to the shop. We put a mask on. Like, it's just the thing. Like, but
I know, and I can imagine, especially because this is what they're known to. They won't see it as anything different, right? They won't see it as being traumatic, but for us, we do, because we're projecting our own displeasure or anxieties or frustrations onto those that are younger, and we're tainting them. Not intentionally, but we are, because we're projecting those emotions onto them. As you just said, Rachel, put your mask on. It's the same thing as like, be careful. Mm-hmm. And then you're not careful because you don't appreciate the term of caution or danger, because your parents always micromanaging you, even if out of health and safety.
Yeah.
That's that's interesting.
I think to like help, that, like you were saying, be careful, helping them develop a sense of independence. And we really bubble wrap kids a lot. Like I think we see them as these extremely vulnerable and fragile little beings. And while that is true in some senses, I think they are so incredibly resilient and have so much more to offer than we like give them credit for. Like you were saying, like, be careful. If we let them kind of explore in a safe way, then they're able to feel that sense of self-efficacy, that ability in themselves. And that is huge for everything going forward in life. Like having that mindset of not just like, I'm born this way, I can't do anything about it. Like,
right.
No, I have the power to, you know, I can learn, I can change, I can, you know, whatever. So I think with the pandemic, we'll see how that impacts it. But I think even though their independence is stifled a little bit as little people right now, I think there are definitely ways we can still encourage that.
Well, and I think that, and that's why I think my sister did make the decision, which I fully agree with. She's like, no, he's by himself and just with me all day long. And he doesn't have any other kids. Like she's like, he needs to integrate a little bit and know what that's like. And, you know, in as safe of an environment as she can have him in. And it's a small daycare. So there's like only 5 or 6 kids, not like 20 or 30.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it makes all a difference though.
It does. All right. So Tiff, you said you kind of, I thought you said something like a couple of weeks ago, you were pivoting from a career or something. Did you say that?
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by that?
So I work part-time while I'm doing my undergrad. And I started working for a different counseling firm a couple of weeks ago. And my role is less, I mean, it's still administrative, but it's definitely more creative, and I get to do lots of the social media stuff and operations, and it's a newer business. So it's implementing and setting up a lot of our kind of like structural things. And I'm such a creative person, and I feel like over the last few years with being in school, it's just been like basically non-existent. So to feel like I feel like I'm just basically doing art for like 5 hours when I'm working, and I'm like, this is the best. Like, amazing. I can't believe I finally, and I was hoping that I would be able to find something like this after graduation while I'm doing my master's, but it just kind of happened and was like, yeah, I have to take this opportunity now. And it's a bit scary. Like I've never felt afraid of taking a leap into a new job. Like I'm kind of like I sort of thrive on it. Like I love learning new things and being in new environments. But with the pandemic, I was like, this is a risk. Like, I don't know if this is going to work, and it's scary. The job I was at was like super comfortable. I'd been there for a while. And I think, it's just this whole situation with the pandemic has really changed the way that I think a lot of us think. Like I'm usually such a advocate for change and mixing it up and not being stagnant. And I found that last year stability was really comforting to me.
Yeah, that makes, now are you going into an office?
No, I'm still everything is online, still doing it remotely, which is great.
Yeah.
Because I literally just have my little like office and my kitchen corner, and I live there.
I understand. I totally understand that.
We have a window that like we are on the first floor, and so we have a window that like people can walk past on the sidewalk, and we've lived here for a long time, so most of our friends know where we live. So I'll just get like a little knock on the window, and people will wave at me because they're like, we know you're going to be there. So we just
that's kind of cute. Are you in Burnaby still, or
no? We're in Vancouver.
Okay. Yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's so adorable. I love it. So one thing I was curious about, as we start to approach the end of the hour, I wanted to know a little bit more about you growing up. And it doesn't have to be anything like super personal or anything super deep, unless if you wish to share it. But I'm curious to know about you growing up and just kind of how you got to where you are now. Because we've been talking a lot about present life, but not so much about, who Tiff was from before.
Yeah. Man, that's also something I've been thinking about so much this past year. I don't know why. I don't know if it's the same for both of you, but like I've been so nostalgic, and I'll just have this like random memory pop up of something that happened that wasn't even that meaningful at the time. But so I think growing up, I've always been, like I said, love creativity, love moving my body. Any kind of, like when I was really little, my mom was like, you just never stop moving. Like I was always climbing a tree or like running outside or playing with my friends. And so that has been like a common theme throughout my life, is like always having some. Now it's kind of, you know, we do a lot of trail running and hiking and biking and stuff, but that was like a big part of my growing up, was just sports, dance, movement. Yeah, it's funny looking. I've had my 20s were full of traveling, full of experience. School was not, I did a few short courses here and there, but travel is my, like, if I have one, I don't know what you would call it, like thing, I would say travel is probably it. And yeah, I went to school in Italy for a little while and spent some time in Florence doing, what did I do there? What was that school for? I did industrial design. So I thought that I wanted to be a designer, which is cool because it's kind of starting to come full circle with the work I'm doing now. Is a little more creative, but yeah, industrial design. And then I would come home for like, I don't know, 4 months, make a bunch of money serving. I worked in restaurants for like, that's like a huge part that we haven't talked about, but that's like a massive part of my last probably 15, 16 years of life is the service industry. So yeah, make enough money to go travel for another 4 or 5 months, spent tons of time in Europe. I did one trip, actually, I'll tell you a hilarious story. We can actually,
go.
Yeah, this is a good story to end on. So I'm traveling in Spain. I'd been there I went and spent like a month in Ireland, and I worked on a pig farm for a while, helping. Yeah, I was a vegan at the time, and I really wanted to see like farming and where things came from. So I was working on a pig farm for a bit and helping a friend's mom who lived in like Northern Ireland with the lambing season. So little baby lambs. It was so cute.
Wow.
But the rain really got to me, and I was like, okay, I got to get out of here. I need some sun. And this was just after the 2010 Olympics. So I had literally spent like a month working my ass off in a bar and had not seen the daylight for a long time. So I was like, okay, going to Spain, I'm going to rent a car and I'm going to camp my way from Seville up to Barcelona.
Oh.
I rent this car. I traveled alone mostly when I was younger, and rent this car. That was an experience in itself, trying to get it out of the city in Seville. And I don't know, a couple of days in, I hugged the coast all the way around, but there's in Granada, I play guitar, and there was, you know, that's like the flamenco kind of like, they make all the guitars there. So I went inland to see that and was driving back to the coast, and there was a sign that said Castillo for a castle. Yeah. I was like, ooh, cool. Like, that looks like a little, like a hiking thing. I can go walk up and see this castle. So I'm driving down this road. I'm in this little tiny Fiat, just like driving. The road's getting more and more narrow. I'm like, oh, this is like pretty rugged. Like, there's a huge orange orchard off to my right and some like random farmhouses, and it's getting more and more narrow and more and more narrow. I'm like, I don't think I'm going to be able to turn around. Like, I hope this opens up soon. So it didn't. And I was like, okay, I got to figure out how to turn around here. So I get out of the car, walk up the road and see, okay, yeah, there's this, a little bridge with nothing on the sides, mind you. And then I can go up and turn around. Cool. So I'll do that. Not thinking that the vehicle I had was like a tiny little vehicle, no 4-wheel drive. Like, it was a little Fiat.
Yeah.
And I go to run up this hill with the car, and it just basically goes up and slides back down towards this bridge with no rails. And I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm out. I can't even back out of here. Like, the road was as narrow as the car. So I'm freaking out a little bit. So I'm like, okay, I got to walk back into that town that I saw and see if someone can help me. So I walk into town. It's Sunday. It's literally all just like old Spanish ladies walking around in black, like they looked like they were in mourning. And I'm like, oh my God, no one, I couldn't speak Spanish. No one could speak English. Oh. And so finally I come upon this construction site and these guys are there and I'm like, oh, help me. Like my car is stuck. No Spanish. I'm like, yo auto y stuck.
Yeah.
And so they finally were like, okay, I think I know what you're saying. Take me to a mechanic. And this mechanic, who I will never forget, he walked or drove with me with his car back to my car. And he looks at me and he goes, your car is there? And I said, yeah. He's like, oh, no, driving, walking. So I had driven down the hiking trail, which was just like the road, but it was the trail apparently. So bless this angel of a man, he backed the car out like painstakingly while I'm like biting my nails, hoping that my rental car doesn't fall off like the edge into this orchard. Yeah. And he gets it out. I like hug him. I'm crying. He's like, it's okay. We go back into town. I buy him like, I got him like a 6-pack of beer and drew him a card and was like, if you asked like me to marry you, I would say yes. You're my savior. So I feel like that sums up my 20s really well in a nutshell. That story of just like kind of loving adventure, but not planning a lot and just kind of going with it.
Amazing.
So there's a lot of things in that story because you also mentioned guitar as like you play the guitars. There was the guitar, there was the traveling, there was the adventure spirit, being on your own. Yeah. Like, my goodness.
Yeah. That's a good sum up. That trip I also camped on these things, you think you're like, I would never do this now, ever.
Yeah.
I camped on beaches alone in my tent, just on random beaches in Spain. Didn't know anybody.
Wow.
I am so happy that I did it, but like, I would never do that now.
Amazing. And, I need it. and to wrap this up, you have a beautiful husband inside and out, such a darling specimen of a human being. And how did you two meet each other?
We worked together actually in the restaurant that I was at. What I said, I made all my money to go traveling. Yeah. We met there and it's funny, my sister and I and my husband and her husband all worked there.
Oh my gosh.
We all started our relationships there. So,
oh my God.
Yeah, we kind of all had this little family and now we just get to like live the rest of our lives together. It's pretty great.
May I ask which restaurant this was?
It doesn't exist anymore, but it was called Sip Resto Lounge on Granville Street.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, it's now the pawn shop.
Yes.
Best tacos, I think, in the entire city, and such a good happy hour. Just side note.
Yes, that's right.
But yeah, Sip Resto Lounge. It was when we worked there, it was in its heyday, and it was like the kind of like lounge version of Cheers. Everybody.
I was just gonna say Cheers. It's your own Cheers.
Yeah, it was. It's a really bright spot in I think most of our lives. We look back on it fondly.
That's so cool.
Oh my God.
I do remember, like, did people just call it Sip though? Because
Sip, yeah.
I remember that, because I live like 2 minutes away from the pawn shop, so that's really funny. I remember passing by Sip a ton. I didn't know that you were there. I love it.
Yeah, we were there slinging drinks.
And is there anything you want to plug or share with your listeners, your followers, your community while we still have you here?
Oh gosh, plug. Not very good at that. I would say I'm not going to plug one single business, but if you need any help or if you're looking for a mental health professional, start at Psychology Today. It is an amazing website that basically gives you an overview of therapists, psychologists, counselors within British Columbia. And it's great because they're accredited. So these are, if you have extended medical, you can use that. And if you are in trouble and you need help right away, then please know that the Crisis Center is always available to you at any time.
Thank you. And I'm putting that in my phone because we'll put those in the show notes as well. So make sure that's up. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. It was so good to meet you. You're such a sweetheart. And you didn't even really mention, because I was saying, you're talking about growing up, but you didn't really mention your twin sister that much. I was wondering, did you travel with her at all growing up, or?
You know what? We did not travel at all. My sister took a very different path than me. So she was in school for a lot of our 20s and worked a lot. So we haven't traveled a lot. My husband's Australian. So we went back there to get married a few years ago, and my sister and her husband came back, and that was like a highlight travel moment with her for sure.
That's awesome. Oh my goodness. Well, we have one last question, which is the most serious question of all, is if you were a juice, what would you be and why?
Great question. If I was a juice, what would I be and why? Oh, I know. It's kind of weird, but okay. There's this juice called lingonberry juice. If you go to IKEA, have it. You both know it. I love it. It's lingonberry juice. It's sweet, but it's also a little bit tart. And I feel like that's me. I am sweet and nice, but I do have an edge to me. And I have a little bit of quite a fiery side to me. So I would say that, yeah, it's sweet, delicious, but also has a little bit of a tartness to it. It takes you by surprise.
That's a new one. And any Swedes that are watching this.
Oh gosh, it's my next travel place to go.
I would love to go.
Yeah.
So yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate you reaching out to me about being on the podcast. I knew that this would just be an effortless, seamless dialogue and just shooting the shit and having a good time with it as well. And I can't wait to see you in person again, hopefully as soon as possible.
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you so much for having me. This is so fun.
It's so fun.
Good luck with your studies.
Thank you.
And all that. And yeah, we'll keep in touch and hopefully get this episode out this weekend if we can, or if I can, I should say. I know. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.